Good evening, everybody. This is the Speak Project, and I am Tank. And today is a very exciting day. We are going to get into some really deep and esoteric realities, some of the science of sacred geometry. And with us, we literally have Fred Usher, who wrote the book on sacred geometry to a certain extent. Mr. Usher is an incredible artist who actually uses the principles with sacred geometry. I was just looking at his work, and as an artist, I have to tell you, Fred, I was very impressed. And he has been involved in aware of these things for a long time, and we're going to let him talk about it. And he's also been a speaker for the group that travels around discussing the Book of Enoch, and really just some amazing experiences, Fred. I was really impressed looking at some of your videos and doing some research. So where do you want to start today? How did you get involved in even have the revelation about sacred geometry? So how does one go from making, because I've made birdhouses when I was a kid, and I am a sculptor, but it never in my life did that ever translate to me that suddenly I understood sacred geometry. So how did that experience happen for you?
Well, we got to start with one of the main principles, and that's the Fibonacci cycle. You know what that is, right?
Well, you know what? I might understand what it is, but we have many people that are listening, so I appreciate an explanation.
It's really based upon the growth of all the plants and animals and everything else in this planet. And it really starts out with two simple numbers, like 1 and 2, and we add those together, and we get 3. Then we add 2 and 3 together, and we get 5. Then we can add 3 and 5 together, and we get 8. And 5 and 8 is 13. 13 and 8 is 21. So you see how this cycle just keeps on adding the last two numbers to itself. And as it does so, it creates a fraction called the phi fraction, which is 1.618. And this particular fraction is found, say the very first bone in your first finger, your index finger, is 1. The next bone is 1.618. It's that simple. It's right there in our hands. It's right there in fish. It's right there in birds. It's right in the pine cone and the sunflower seed pattern. It's a very natural thing that is engraved upon this planet, and that's the Fibonacci cycle. And the reason it's called that is because an Italian guy named Leonardo di Fibonacci discovered this in a leek word plant when he was a gardener or a greenhouse keeper back in Italy, back in about the 15th or 16th century. And so that's where this came from. And the birdhouses I was making had to be 8 inches by 5 inches in order to make it a proper space for the bird. So I was already using those numbers, and I was already using that number to make the pattern, to make the birdhouse.
Now, Fred, you talked to me about this, and this is something I'm very interested in. And Fred is a member in the Creators Network, and one of the projects that he wants to bring to life is to create cities that are where the buildings are made according to sacred geometry, and this is really optimal for life. And I just mentioned that now because you're talking about the space in the birdhouse for the bird is even based on sacred geometry, and so should, I guess, our home, everything else.
Right. The main goal or project that I have in mind is to create a sacred geometry school surrounded by a sacred geometry community in which we would study and learn and use the principles of sacred geometry to live by. Because sacred geometry, if you notice on my first page, I really feel it touches us in our mind and in our soul in a way that's hard for most people to understand because it's like a special language. But it really gets to our heart and to our soul, and it really helps us understand who we really are, because we are not just of this world.
So, give me an idea. How do we apply that for the everyday person while we're waiting for you to build these cities of sacred geometry? How
Well,
does one go about to feel that, and what are the benefits?
well, the main benefit I can show you that somebody in Russia has done is that they built some fiberglass pyramids in various areas of Russia and did some experiments with them to find out what happened when this pyramid was there. There's a website, you just got to Google it, for Russian pyramids, and it talks all about it. The largest one they built was 144 foot high, and it weighed 55 tons. They said they built it at a cost of $1 million in Russian money, so it was quite a bit of money. It was a fiberglass pyramid made of. So some of the experiments they did was they found it improved the immune system of organisms and improved the regeneration of tissue. They put seeds in it and stored them in there for about 5 days and found that they had a germination increase of 30 to 100% in germination and yield.
Wait, 30 to 100%? Wow.
30 to 100.
Oh, 30 to 100%. Gotcha, okay.
Right. Increase in germination and yield as far as the seeds that they had stored inside there. They noticed that there was improvement in the ozone in the area where the pyramid was. The seismic activity near the pyramid was reduced. Violent weather was reduced in the vicinity of the pyramid. The pyramids constructed in southern Russia appear to have a positive effect on the oil production, and the oil was less vicious by 30%, and the yield of oil wells increased. They did a study of 5,000 prisoners who ingested the salt and pepper that had been exposed into the...
Fred?
Hello? We lost Fred. I think there's something wrong with your phone, Fred. There?
Well, we'll get Fred back in here in a minute. I'm sure he'll call right back in. So that's
Am I back now?
Stuff. There you go, Fred. So you said where we lost you there is you were talking about the prison.
Am I back now? Hello?
Yes, sir. Hello? Fred, can you hear us?
I hear you, but I can't hear you.
Okay, we can hear you, Fred. Go ahead and talk.
Hello?
Fred, go ahead and talk.
Okay. The prisoner population they found had a less violence and had an overall behavior rate that was improved. So there's many things. There's about 15 different things that they list here that by building a pyramid in this area in Russia, they were able to experiment with and improve their lifestyle by having this in their area. Another thing that
how big is the pyramid?
The pyramid was 144 foot high and an angle of 72 degrees.
Okay. Four-sided.
So it was four-sided. And this Dr. Hurtak and his wife, Desiree Hurtak, and another guy named James Ernest Brown, I have a book I just received from them that they just published a month or two ago called Giza Industrial Complex. Giza's Industrial Complex. And it's all about how the pyramids in Egypt were actually energy producers by using salt water and some type of gas energy that they were able to use the pyramids to produce energy. I haven't even finished reading the book yet. I've only read parts of it. It's just amazing what this stuff is found as far as...
Well, the belief is, in addition to what they said, is the belief is that the pyramids of Giza that actually housed one of the 7 Arks of the Covenant. And then that connects to a underground aquifer of flowing water there that actually activated the energy from the Earth, just to stimulate it just enough, and then that was projected up through the middle to attract down the ether from the energy, so to speak, right? And they used all the materials to accomplish that. The exact same principle that you would see with Tesla's energy towers that he made on Long Island. I mean, matter of fact, that's where Tesla got the idea from. Is from the pyramids of Giza. Which it's pretty well established, except for the 7 arcs of the covenant. For the most part, I know where a couple of them are supposed to be held. I know that the trustee at one point was taken to a place to see one of them and to actually be tested with it. But I know that there were 7 of them all together because they held the torus energy fields in place around the planet.
Well, the tube torus is a very important part of sacred geometry also. That's the donut shape. The tube torus, or the donut.
Sure.
And, I mean, every time your heart beats, you put out this electrical field around your body in the shape of a tube torus. So it's part of your own nature is to have this electrical field around you.
Well, every cell of your body creates its own torus energy field. I mean, the extensions, everything does. Yep. Everything is generating its own electricity. And I forget what it is, the exact number in the body, but it's some absurd amount of energy is created, like 144,000, megahertz or something, just from the human body, that are created. So we are the catalysts and the generators that holds the planet and the reality that we're creating in place all the time. And that's something I'm always fascinated when I hear about sacred geometry, because in reality, it's the awareness of our power and that we are this generator that actually allows us to create a more, a better environment for us to live in, right? A reality that is more conducive with who we want to be. So I think that sacred geometry is very much in line with that.
Right. It's because sacred geometry really defines the laws that create everything in our existence. I mean, it's been used by the ancients in, say, building like the Notre Dame and all the other churches. They always built those completely around sacred geometry. And the Greeks built the Parthenon, and I'm sure that the Colosseum in Rome and things like that, they all used sacred geometry in the building of these things. The aqueduct for Rome, So this history of sacred geometry has been, I feel, really hidden from us in this current population of time, and it was even much more known back at the time of the Greeks and Romans and the Egyptians.
Right. The Tartarians, they're notorious for utilizing this very same type of skill set to create these star bases, star cities around the world. You can see that same principle repeated in major areas where they were actually drawing energy. They point out places like the Empire State Building and the Chrysler Tower in New York, and how they align with the bridges to create these energetic fields that act as conduits to draw in energy.
Right.
So
the same thing with the layout of Washington D.C. was all based upon sacred geometry.
Well, it's all based on ancient Rome, right? Because they designed it to intimidate people as they came in.
Right.
But yeah, definitely. I mean, that's what the obelisks are. That you have, the idea of down in Egypt that you were talking about with, with the pyramids there, and then to have the various obelisks. The belief was that all of that, what it was doing was creating an energy grid that powered all of Egypt.
Right. They knew much more about using, say, free energy than we're allowed to know here now.
So, what's the future of this? I mean, I know that you are involved with a lot of things that are, not the normal kind of stuff. So, tell me about the Book of Enoch and what your experience is with, that entire group that channeled that message and the very famous book and the whole idea? Like, what is the story with that? Tell me about it.
Well, first of all, the author says it is not channeled. It was a direct experience where he was taken for 3 days to Metatron by Enoch and downloaded the book. So it was not channeled.
So now that's it marked for anybody listening. Do we often hear about channelers, right, who kind of take over someone's body, or they just kind of, and that message comes through? It also happens in other ways, right, where someone, a being from the future or a galactic or, some other dimensional being is able to communicate through, a vessel. And that's one version of channeling. But what he's describing here is the way in the Bible it describes God said that if there is a prophet among you, I will speak unto him in a vision and a dream. He said, but with Moses it is not so. With Moses I speak as a friend speaketh to a friend, mouth to mouth, or face to face. Now that's what you're describing, correct?
Right. He was taken by Enoch to Metatron and surrounded by special energy so that he could get into the presence of the throne and get this book downloaded so that he could come back and write it for us. And ever since he did this in 1973, for the last 45, 46 years now, he has devoted his entire life to nothing but teaching this book and living on it. Okay. Now, I myself was handed a book or a copy of this book in a little bookstore when I was in Las Vegas in the summertime one time, and I believe again it was a special being that did it because I did not see the door open or close when this being was in the room and handed me the book. So it was a special book that they wanted me to have at the time because I was actually brought up as a Catholic, and I was educated by the Franciscans and have my degree in philosophy. But when we got to the history of philosophy and studied Kierkegaard and Sartre, and I think therefore I am, I had to leave. And with the Keys of Enoch book, I choose therefore I am, and I can choose who I am. And so now we go into the definition of the Exodus book.
Free will.
Exodus book, which is 3:14, the number for pi, and it's the only place where Jehovah describes himself as I am that I am. Ea Asher Ea in Hebrew.
That's not what it says. Ea Asher Ea says, I will be what I will to be. And now that proves your point better, by the way. Because in that definition, what he's saying is, I choose according to my will, and I will be whatever I will myself to be. To make your point more effectively. Because I am that I am is just saying that I am just this. It's a perversion that's put in the scriptures. But what Aya Asher Aya means is I will be what I will to be, meaning that he chooses to manifest as whatever he wants to be. Just, excuse me, not to derail you, so go ahead, sir.
No, that's fine. No, that's the whole thing of us evolving in our consciousness. That's the other thing that happens with sacred geometry, is that I believe that it raises the consciousness of people and the consciousness of the planet so that we can live in a much more loving and generous and joyful way and happy way on this planet at this time without having the problems of disease and the problems of war and pestilence and all that stuff.
So, you're talking about a world with no disease, no war, and the goal is happiness, right? So I think that people are, by nature, we're purpose-driven. So do you think that denotes a purpose or a state of being while pursuing your purpose? I mean, is it just the goal just to be happy? Is that the only goal, or is it, according to sacred geometry?
I would say it's to be happy, but it would be, because you're a creator, you would be able to create your art and whatever passion you would have in whatever way it was, and whether it was when I was 10 years old making birdhouses, or whether it is now making the latest project I'm making is a mezuzah and angel pole. Instead of a peace pole, I'm making it. Instead of a peace pole, I'm making an angel pole.
Oh, very cool. I love your stuff, by the way. You really are a master woodworker. I examined that, and I am a sculptor, but I don't sculpt the same way, and I really admire and appreciate the skill that you use. I was very impressed.
Well, it all came from my dad. I was taught from the time I was a teenager how to work in a wood shop and how to do everything perfectly on that basis. So that's what I came here to learn, and I was able to do that. So I still have a wood shop right here in my house today. So I just love creating things, and that's my passion. And I love explaining sacred geometry to people and what it does and what it can do. One of my favorite projects to do for the community would be make a dodecahedron-shaped hall where instead of a normal hall with the stage in front and the people just sitting all in the back watching, this particular shape, a dodecahedron, would have the seats on 5 sides, and the presenter would be in the center, in the center floor, and the 5 sides would have the stairs going up, and the 5 other parts on the top would have the screen, so everybody could watch what's going on. And that's one of the projects I would like to build.
That's pretty incredible. I have to really. It's hard to visualize, though. It's something we have to draw out and let people see.
Well, we gotta tell people probably about the platonic solids, because they are the most important part of this universe. There's only 5 shapes that we call them platonic solids because the first book that we find them written about was the Timaeus that was written by Plato. But they could be called many other things. And there's a tetrahedron, which has 4 sides. A hexahedron, or cube, has 6 sides. An octahedron, or a double pyramid, has 8 sides. A dodecahedron has pentagons and has 12 sides. And an icosahedron has 20 sides. Now, the difference is that every piece of every one of these shapes is exactly the same size with the same angle on it to make this thing fit together. So it's quite a job to create these pieces and glue them together. I've done many sets of them. Anyway,
so if you make something like that, what would it do for a community? If we built that first and then we built a community around something like that, what would happen, in your opinion?
I don't know. I think we could get a lot of people that present various topics like they do on TED Talks and some of these other things that would really help raise the consciousness again of the people of what's going on here. And so people would have a greater understanding.
I think that could act as almost a device to actually project into multiple dimensions. It sounds like to me that if whatever you shared in that place, it would really be a sacred space.
Right. Well, you remember the movie? You remember the movie Contact?
Yep.
Okay. Well, the final device that she goes into to go meet her father is a dodecahedron. That's the final device that that she goes into.
That's right. I remember that.
Now, if the people want to watch my videos, I put a second video up on my website. I don't care for YouTube that much, so I put them on my own website. My website is geocosmicarts.com, plural. geocosmicarts.com. And I've got 2 videos on it, along with pictures of about 100 crop circles and 50 sacred symbols and a bunch of other stuff. and but you can watch the videos there. And what I found was interesting was the fact that if I take all the angles that go into these first four devices, say the tetrahedron has got a 60-degree angle 3 times for an equilateral triangle, or 180 degrees on one side, and it has 4 triangles making it up. So actually it has 720 degrees of angles in this tetrahedron. When we go to the octahedron, it's got 8 triangles, or double that, so it's got 1,440 degrees in an octahedron. When we go to the hexahedron, which is the cube, we've got 360 degrees times 4 or 6 sides, so that is a total of 2,160 degrees. And finally, the icosahedron has 20 sides, 20 pieces to it. 20 times 180 is 3,600. So we add all these together, 720, 1,440, 2,160, and the final one of 3,600, and we come up with 7,920, which happens to be the diameter of the Earth. So why is it that the code is right there in these objects, and it actually turns out to be the diameter of the Earth, and the cube itself, being 2,160, is actually the diameter of the Moon. Another thing I found is that you can take within about 90% accuracy, or 99% accuracy, I think it is, you can place 108 moons between us and the Moon. You can place 108 Earths across the Sun. You can create 108 suns between us and the Sun. So why is a number like this so repetitive and right there in front of us? It's part of the geometry that makes up this place. Am I gone? Hello?
Hello, Fred. You're there. Go ahead. Sorry about that. We both got bumped off.
We got nailed again because that's the way the energy flows, you know. I don't know where we were.
Right. You were talking about the 365 times some number.
Well, I was talking about the fact that the tetrahedron, octahedron, hexahedron, and icosahedron have a total number of 7,920 degrees in the angles that make up those particular pieces. And it happens that the diameter of the Earth is 7,920.
Wow.
Isn't that kind of a strange code or a strange fact?
Well, it's an incredible fact. I mean, it really speaks to the fact that everything has an intelligent design, and everything is in perfect harmony, like harmonic resonance with the sacred geometry, which would stand to reason that means the sacred geometry creates its own frequency that literally is in harmony with the creation of life. It sounds like to me. Am I looking at that right?
Right, and if we take just the dodecahedron, the octahedron, and the tetrahedron, we get a number of 5,040, and the radius of the Earth and the Moon together is 5,040. There's another example. Now, there was a crop circle in 2002 that had 504 squares in it. I've been studying the crop circle since the 1990s, so about 30 years, and I've drawn probably 150 of them in my AutoCAD and my computer after they came down, and I got a picture of them. And from 2008 to 2012, 5 years in a row, I spent the month of July and August, part of it, in England, and I've probably been in about 50 different crop circles during that time. So it's really interesting also to study these events called crop circles. I found you can really tell when when you find, say, a real crop circle versus one that is man-made, because about 2/3 of the crop circles are man-made. People don't know that, but that's really what they've come down to. But when you're in a crop circle that was not man-made, you find that the knuckles in the grain will have like microwave holes blown in the knuckles, so that the moisture inside the knuckle or the growth point of the grain got so hot that it blew a hole in that knuckle. And humans don't quite have enough energy to quite do that to many pieces of grain that are in a crop circle. The other thing I found was you would pick up 2 pieces of flint rocks that was in the crop circle from the dirt right there, and there'd be a slight magnetism to these flint rocks, which normally are not magnetic. And then you would go outside the circle and pick up 2 pieces, and you'd find nothing there. So I thought I'd be wise, and I'd collected a whole bunch of flint rocks a couple times from when I was in circles, and I brought them back. But by the time I got back to America, there was no more magnetism left. It had dissipated. So that was quite a trick. Wow. And the third thing that I found that's quite interesting, and I really didn't find this until, well, I think it was about the second year I was there, or third year, was it was very nice in the summertime to just lay on the ground and lay on top of the wheat. And in England, there's always just basically clouds in the sky. They don't see much sun. So you lay there and close your eyes and meditate on your back while you're just laying there. And some of the times when I would open my eyes up to look at the clouds, I could see a layer of stars between me and the clouds.
Wow.
It was like a dome. There was like a dome of energy over this particular area where the crop circle was. So that was a pretty special experience also. And
well, I'll tell you something about that. Fred, I spoke to a woman, and I can't remember her name. I only spoke to her one time, but she's the first person to ever really see the crop circles come into formation. And she said that they were actually emanated and created by the earth itself, and they actually were healthy for the planet, and they allowed the energy to come into the planet to actually enhance the production of the crops and the nutrients and the entire base of the of the earth itself. And that's what they're from, not from some outer galactic.
Right. Some of the experiments they've done with the seeds of the part where the crop circle was, they found that the yield and the growth of these particular seeds inside the crop circle were much heavier and much better than the regular seeds.
That's pretty incredible. I mean, so you're talking about using sacred geometry in this case, that it has a natural, because you just pointed out all these different ways that sacred geometry is seen in the natural formation, what we would consider to be natural formation of the earth itself, the correlation with the sun and the moon and all these different things. But then by using these symbols that are created naturally by the earth, I guess potentially we could do that as well, right? And we could create and magnify not just the crops themselves, but the actual vitality of those crops. Is that possible?
Right. I believe so. That's where this whole thing of having a sacred geometry community and everyone working for the information and the study of sacred geometry, that I think it would just explode with new features that we don't know about now.
Yeah, I think that's really incredible information. It seems like I'm sure that's a symbol and a principle that must be repeated over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
In all aspects of nature then. So, now, we talked about the Book of Enoch. Now, I know you were down in the Riviera Maya, right, with Chichen Itza, which is a sacred place, or was a sacred place for the Mayan, and you spoke on sacred geometry, correct? At the conventions.
Yeah, I've been to.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Been to Chichen Itza a couple times, and one of the times when I was there, I was walking between the pyramid and the ball court with the author, Dr. J.J. Hurtak. Between these two places, we were walking next to each other, and this was in 2008, and he really put it on me, saying that Fred, there are 5 platonic solids, but there's really 2 missing. There's really 7. There's really 7 platonic solids, and I want you to find the other 2. So isn't that quite a nice presentation to get put on you, huh?
That is quite the charge, indeed. Yes.
So anyway, if you watch the first video, I find that the one that makes up the grid of the Earth, the triicotahedron, is made up of rhombuses. And the reason it doesn't fit the definition of a platonic solid is because a rhombus has 2 angles, a 120 and a 60-degree angle, versus all 60-degree angles or all 90-degree angles or all 180-degree angles for the other platonic solids. So there's 2 angles on each piece, so it doesn't fit the definition of a platonic solid that way. But it really fits because it's all made of only the same piece, which is this diamond shape or a rhombus. And another time when I was studying one of the other books that Dr. Hurtak wrote called the Holy Zephyros, about the Tree of Life, and in this book he talked about the tetrahedron and the fact that it had 7 ways to spin. And so I finally created a tetrahedron and cut the points off it to make it like a truncated tetrahedron, so I could put the axes through it to get the 7 ways to spin this. And I found that through the bottom and the point, I was able to get 4 spins, and through the edges, I was able to get the other 3 spins. So there's 7 ways to spin a tetrahedron, and that's why we're in a 7 universe with 7 colors of the rainbow, 7 notes on the piano, 7 days of our week, 7 everything, 7 chakras. The 7 is such a number for us, and it's because we're in a 7 universe that has got 7 ways to spin. And by connecting the 14 points that came from the 7 axes, I was able to make another rhombic device called the rhombic dodecahedron. So I presented this to Dr. Hurtak about in 2012 with the fact that the rhombic dodecahedron and the triicotahedron made up the other 2 solids. And that particular week of that presentation, I had some friends from Australia staying with me because they had come over to the conference. And we got up one morning and they said, "You were talking in your sleep last night. What was your dream all about?" And I told my friends, well, I was fighting with spirit because I was trying to get a name for the 7 platonic solids. And at first I was going to call them the Frederian solids, and spirit wouldn't have any of that.
They didn't like that, huh? Okay.
No. So then I said, well, maybe I'll call them the Hurtakian solids. And the spirit didn't like any of that. So the name that they gave me to call these were the Metatronic solids.
Metatronic solids.
The Metatronic solids. So there's 7 Metatronic solids. And I found that I could create...
You're referring to the cube of Metatron?
Well, the Metatron's cube is just a 2-dimensional drawing in which you can make 3-dimensional shapes as far as the 5 platonic solids. Okay? So when we add the 2 other shapes to that, which are not in the cube of the Metatronic cube, Metatron's cube, which is just a 2-dimensional drawing, which allows us to make 3-dimensional shapes, is that part of it.
Okay. So you discovered
another interesting. Yeah.
Were you able
Go
to
ahead.
define the? So you were able to define the Metatronic solids for the gentleman that asked you?
Yeah, I presented it to him on one of his conferences.
Okay, gotcha. And that's Dr. Hertzak you're talking about, or no?
Right.
Is that who you spoke with?
Right.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay, go on.
Another interesting number that's really quite interesting is, you know how music is tuned to this A at 440 hertz? For
I do,
like a piano tuner and everything. And
right.
This actually came about at the time of about the First and Second World War, I guess, was when they changed our music to get it standardized at this 440 hertz. But the music should really be tuned to
432, right?
The 432. Okay, because if we take the Star of David and expand it, double it to 12, 6 times 12 is 72, and we take the 6 days of creation times 72, and we get the number 432. Do you know that 432 times 432 is 186,600, which is the speed of light on this planet?
I did not know that. Wow.
Isn't that interesting? Another number like there, 432 times 432, the speed of light. And in another book that Dr. Hertek wrote and translated called the Pistis Sophia, he talks about how Christ after the resurrection was experienced by the apostles and how his light was 7 times brighter, and then it was 7 times brighter than that. So the speed of light, once you get outside this solar system and galaxy, becomes 7 times faster. So our science is really screwed up when they say something is 100 million light years away, because they don't understand that the speed of light is faster once you get outside of this solar system.
Well, right. I mean, realistically, it would stand to reason that you would just be able to open up portals and just essentially collapse the space in between, and rather than traveling anywhere, you essentially realize that all things exist in the same place at the same time with an infinite number of options and opportunities that we ultimately are choosing. So that's fascinating. Yeah, I can see that. So now all these incredible things. Now you've been studying this and aware of these things since the 70s, right?
I would say more I did more studying in the 80s. In the 70s, I left Wisconsin and moved to Arizona in 1971. And in 1973, I started a business called Arizona Case, and I made display cases for the flea market and the gem show people for 20 years, and sold the business in 1993, and it's still going today. So I worked like 70 or 80 hours a week running my own business, and made display cases for, 20 years. At one time, I had 15 people working for me.
And you were applying these principles with the sacred geometry then, or no?
Right. I would make displays on a sacred geometry principle at that time. People didn't understand it or know it, but I would do it.
So that to me seems like something that is really amazing, because you want to build a whole cities this way, right? Because this would help optimize, in my understanding, the toroidal energy fields on the planet, which would ultimately expand the vital life properties, the chi, the essence of the world, and ultimately you would crowd out things like disease and poverty and hunger, and it would just cause a thriving vitality on the planet if we were to start building cities that were considerate of the life on the planet.
Right. Well, again, how do they have such energy, say, in Egypt and in Greece and in Rome when they were building all these sacred buildings, you know, and sacred things, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of my goals yet is to take the trip down the Nile and visit all those sacred sites over there.
Yeah, you should probably, they're doing a lot of damage to the sacred sites. You know, they've essentially stolen the artifacts from King Tut's, and they are claiming they're on tour, but they're not on real artifacts. They're not the real artifacts. And they've actually discovered another incredible tomb that they believe in. They're saying right now that Cleopatra represents all natural represents the energy inside of it. The energy inside of it is surrounded by stone. I don't think it's shungite, but it's a similar property that held all of the artifacts, all the treasure. They say that it is massive, 100 times the size, King Tut, 100 times the treasure, and 100 times the treasure. There is one of the arcs of God, and no one's reporting it, as you know. There's Smithsonian and others. They're hiding the real history on the planet.
Boy, that was really terrible.
Oh, you couldn't hear me?
No, I heard you, but it's repetitive as far as there's the echo involved.
Take down an echo. Do I have an echo? My sound guy is I'm missing here. Yeah, we'll figure it out. You can figure it out. You got plenty to say. I'll figure it out.
Uh-huh.
So, what do you want to do? What do you want to do with your project?
Oh, you're back. It's good. It's nice now. What do I want to do?
Yeah, I mean, with your city, how would you go about to build this city with sacred geometry? I mean, obviously you're a skilled craftsman. Would you be teaching architects how to do this, or how would you go about to design that?
Well, we would have to contact the right people, and I'm sure the right people would show up with our need for them, and go ahead and create this and lay it out as to however it turned out to be. We just tap into the conscience field at the time and listen to the heartbeat and make it grow from there.
Now, I think that concept that you just talked about, Fred, is really amazing, and I agree. By the way, I talk about this a lot. That what I do all the time is I follow the energy. And wherever the energy takes me, that's where I go. And I think that's part of, the real power of creation is being in alignment with this higher, kind of divine energy that is in us and around us, the source energy that connects everything on the planet. And I can see that being very effective, just attuning ourselves to what is best and what is needed at that time, and drawing those people to us. And I will put that out there. I have at least 100 different facilities around the world, and we will be using these principles that you're talking about, that we're going to use them to build these compounds around the world, to create research facilities, to create healing facilities, and just to create communities where people will thrive. I mean, and that's just the start. That's what we already have in place. So I look forward to doing that. So I agree. But if anybody's listening out there, and an amazing architect who'd be willing and open-minded to consider, to understand these principles, nothing wrong with reaching out to them to see if they'd like to do that. And we'll bring them into Creators Network, and they can start talking to a whole group of people whose projects will be funded. And anything that is going to enhance the vitality, the protection, the intelligence, the efficacy, the beauty, the strength of the human experience, we are very much in support. Mm-hmm. Well, now Now, Fred, I asked you to come out and talk to me for an hour, and I appreciate you so much doing that. We're coming up here at the end of the hour. I know that people, very good chance people might have questions. I don't know if they'll call in or ask questions to me later, but do you want to stick around for a little bit? I'm bringing on another associate of ours, Shilea, who is a very, very advanced spiritual being who is multidimensional and has an incredible understanding of both the Book of Enoch and the sacred geometry as well. Just to follow up. So we're going to bring her on here at about 9 o'clock and see what she has to say. But
okay,
I want to know. Now we have time, and you can talk about whatever you'd like. But I'm curious. What would you recommend to the average person now when you get up to speak? What is I can imagine a lot of people aren't even aware of these things. But once they are aware, what is it that you want them to walk away with and apply? Because I think everything right now is about what can we apply to make the world a better place and actually use in our everyday life. Like what do you do, in addition, obviously your whole life, you're consciously revolving things around sacred geometry and then recognizing it in places. What can the average person do?
Well, I would say that first thing they have to do, and most people have got the internet, and that's why they're even on this call, is the fact that there's so much information on the net already about sacred geometry that if they just do some studying and listen to other various YouTube things about them, one of the other things I studied a lot was on the flower of life and how that is generated and how that was found lasered in Abydos in Egypt on a rock or a tomb or a temple at that time. So I would say that there's a lot of stuff on Facebook. If you just put sacred geometry into Facebook, you'll find a lot of people that are doing sacred geometry art. And it's just looking at this art and letting your mind receive it on a different level, like in your third eye, in the pineal gland. Letting it receive the stuff and put it into your dreams. And you'll find a way that it applies to your life by just trying to use it to wake up other parts of your mind and other parts of your body.
Well, now that's really great about the flower of life. The principle with the flower of life is really incredible, right? And I've actually seen this with my physical eyes. And as you can focus on the source energy that is in the sky, you'll realize that the overlapping patterns actually do go and create the flower of light perpetually all around us. So that the idea is that is the kind of the first cause of creation, right? The ultimate in sacred geometry, or at least in our very limited understanding, I guess. Well, that's pretty fascinating.
I have a scroll saw. You know what a scroll saw is?
I explain it. I have an idea, but I'm sure.
Well, it's a saw like a sewing machine that uses very fine blades to do carving on. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I use my printer to print out the flower of life in various sizes, from anywhere from 6 inches to 24 inches. And I glue that paper to the wood, and then I use the scroll saw, and I probably have made over 500 flower of lives on my scroll saw.
Wow. So it never breaks down? The power itself?
No, the scroll saw breaks down many times as far as the blades are concerned, but the flower of life pattern is I've just made it many, many times. And I also cut out many of the crop circles on the scroll saw before I got my laser printer. About 12 years ago, I got a laser. And so I've been using that a lot more now.
So what do you see right now? I know you just had a convention with you were just there at the with the group from the Book of Enoch who follow that very diligently. Mm-hmm. And every year they release a new chapter, correct, or a new verse of the Book of Enoch.
Well, according to Dr. Hertak, he was given this book of 64 keys in the Book of Knowledge, the Keys of Enoch, the Book of Knowledge. And for the first 40 years, we only had 54 keys. The last 10 keys we were not to get until he was ready to give them to us. And it took actually 43.2 years, 432, from the time that he was given the book to the time we were presented with the 55th key. And the 55th key was I am that I am. The 56th key is I am the image. The 57th is I am the name. And the one we had this year, 58th, was I am the kingdom. Next year we'll have I am the family. And then we'll have I am the word, I am the wisdom, I am the communion, I am the covenant, and I am the revolution. So I actually take,
You already have the next 10 keys?
No, we only have the first 4 of the 10 keys so far.
Oh, okay.
Every year he brings out one more.
I see.
And so we only have the first 4. Anyway, I put these 10 keys as the new 10 commandments, or the 10 commandments that Moses broke when he came down from the hill the first time.
I see. Wow. Okay. I have a little problem with these ideas because I am pretty well versed in scriptures and certainly the Book of Enoch, and I have an alternative that I understand, and I'm very confident in it as well, and I haven't made a business out of it, unlike many who have. So, first, when Moses came down from the Mount Sinai, and this principle of the 10 Commandments, really, you see that principle over in the New Testament where it says that the New Testament is written in the heart and mind. And really what Moses brought down was a heart-shaped stone. But the way it's portrayed is as 2 tombstones. That's a perversion by these, fourth-dimensional galactics who wanted us to worship them as gods. But what Moses really received was a symbol of the heart, right? And the heart being in the mind. So when he came down and they were worshiping another god, right? It broke God's heart. So that's why Moses threw the heart down to the ground, right? That would mean the master law, right? Which was we know is the 10 Commandments or the 613 ordinances altogether. But the real master law was the heart, or was love. So what happened was Moses went back up on top of Mount Sinai, and this is where you have this perversion that's created. When he comes back down, he has the 10 Commandments, and the way we symbolize them, or they symbolize them then, is as 2 tombstones. And now it was called the law of sin and death. So and then later it says the law was not created, or the law was not given to make you righteous. The law was created to make sin. The law was not created to do away with sin. The law was created to make sin more exceedingly sinful. Now, that principle I never hear anybody talk about because it's a perversion, right? And that's the law. Now, the real law, we all know. No one has to tell you. It's in your heart. We know what's right and wrong. We know the difference. And the principle is that God is in our heart and in our mind. And in the Gnostic text, it talks about how when you can align your heart and mind, or your thoughts and your emotions and feelings, and you're able to align these principles, you can literally manifest anything into existence. Now, that's what the scriptures say. Now, and this is kind of
hidden in the scriptures sometimes because we're so used to reading it a different way. Like the constant repetition, which, really, in this experience that you're talking about with Dr. Hurdock, and I certainly believe that he had an experience where he sat down with a metaphysical being that told him all these things. And this is one thing that I really struggle with, because what I see constantly is that there are these metaphysical beings that we automatically assume are righteous because they're more powerful than we are, right? Because they're kind of beyond the flesh. They can do things we can't do. And I'm curious, like, what do you think about that? Because there's obviously both kinds of beings. And you remember back in the 80s and 90s when you had the ascended masters appeared in bodies, and they were all talking about the same thing. They were gathering disciples to them, and they were sharing these mystical secrets. But in that, they all had this version of a catastrophic timeline, and they were all talking about a catastrophic timeline and the role that we would play. So, what are your thoughts on that now? Because that really is in line with the same era that you had the Book of Enoch come out, Jane Roberts, and, when she was channeling these incredible accounts from Seth.
Right.
I mean, are these things? So I'm just curious, because I know it's a very loyal following with the Book of Enoch. I'm just curious, are these things challenged at all? Are they? Is there anything alternative brought up, or is it just accepted as fact?
Well, he's got several books as far as things that he's been able to prove or have proved the concepts of the Keys of Enoch. It's on their website. The keysofenoch.org is their website, or the Academy for Future Science, which is AFFS.com, are the two websites for the keys. And I would say that he's got quite a bit of stuff listed there to prove that most of these things, and some of the things that he predicted from this book in '73, have come true in the last 40 years of time. And
well, I have something to share about that too. Okay, so let me just throw this at you, and this is in no way to discount that at all, but I just want to throw this at you because there's just some things I know that I think fit into this, and I'd like your opinion on them. So what you have is you have a governing body on the earth that all goes back to one sole sovereign mind, which
Gunner's here. Oh,
hey, okay, so
yeah, really fast.
Yes, sir.
We've got callers waiting as soon as you're ready to take some calls. Okay.
Okay, so all the callers, please turn your internet all the way down and just listen to the call, and we will say the first three numbers of your phone number, and we will bring you on here shortly. I'm just going to bring up this one point, and it should create pretty interesting discussion. I know Shylea should be calling in now, Gunner, so you can actually take, if you see a number there from 808, unmute that for me, please.
Okay.
And let me just share this. So, Fred, I hope you're still on the line, because I really want your opinion on this. So, Fred, in the 70s, the same group that set up the Federal Reserve, which is sometimes called the Illuminati, the Order, they call themselves the Order. Some others, there's all types of names they're known by. Right now, we're calling them the Deep State, for the most part, or the Shadow Government. Now, that group, they came up with a plan in the 70s. And what it was, in their world, the leadership at that time, and even to this day, was in the West, here in the United States. And they made their mind up to transition the power of the world over to leaders in the East, of the Chinese. Now, these are the dragon families. So here in the United States, it's the black dragons. And they devised the plan to transfer the leadership over to the Chinese dragons in the East. So now, here is my question, and I just want to put this out there. So in their plan, they referred to something called the Iron Mountain
report, or the Iron Mountain Agenda, sometimes it's called. And in this agenda, they came up with an entire devised scheme to basically go to a peaceful world instead of a war system. And they defined that the whole world had always been under martial law for the last 16,000 plus years. And there's actual contracts to prove that humanity made those contracts and gave over their rights to the Draconians to allow them to control the planet with martial law. So now in the 70s, the same time the Book of Enoch comes out, they make this plan. Now in 1967 is when you had the Iron Mountain Agenda. They came out and they had all these ideas about how to turn the world over to a peaceful way of existence instead of a war society. But in their peaceful world, they didn't use any kind of morality or consideration for the individual human experience. All they looked at was military tactical planning. So they were going to implement things like slavery. They said slavery would probably be necessary so they created a much stronger debt slavery, which we have to this day. They said because people will not do anything, like that we would just be lazy, layabouts if we didn't have war, because war, stimulates everything. That was their belief. So to go to a peaceful system, you'd have to create a universal enemy so that you could do away with borders and nations, and the whole world would come under a new world order or one world government. And in that, they made lots of things, and they changed the culture. They changed the way things would read. And they said that they would have to make the environment an enemy, which we have now. We have this fabricated global warming crisis, which was created by them, and it's created by manipulated data that was submitted to the government. They said that you can make the economy.
One volcano puts out more pollution than what man has done for the last 50 years.
Exactly. It's a complete fabrication, right? And then they also talked about making the economy an enemy, right? So by making debt this overwhelming burden, you've made the economy a tremendous enemy to people, because we take it so seriously, and people don't have money and they've diminished the value of the dollar, and then most of the world is pegged to the dollar, so they've been doing all these things all along. So all of these things that they planned, they are now executing, right? Now, one of the things is back in the 70s, when people really in the Christian churches really started talking about the rapture, right, and the end of days in the Book of Revelation, and they took it and they perverted it to seem like all these things are listed exactly this way in the Bible. And so they came up with, now the term the rapture is never in the Bible, but that's a term that was made very popular starting in the 70s. And they created all these terrifying things, even a movie called The Rapture, where all the Christians would be raptured up, right? Not the Christians, the true believers. And those left behind would have to face 7 years of judgment, right? And there'd be 3.5 years where a righteous man would rise up, and then 3.5 years where an unrighteous man would rise up. And in that, you'd have to get the mark of the beast, because the whole world would come under the New World Order. You get the mark of the beast on the back of your hand or your forehead, and that would become the way you paid for your food and your bills. And so that is presented as prophecy in the Bible, but it's not actually prophecy, right? It's actually a perversion that was implemented into Christianity, and I've seen the plan. This is actually true. And they put it in there to make it seem like it was doctrine. And for the most part, people don't read their Bibles or really know how to find those things, so they just assume that stuff is in the Bible, but it's not. It's different scriptures that mention certain things, but they don't go together the way they say. So what you're seeing now, and I actually know this, Fred, I actually had people that were at the Walmarts, and they were there, and I had Marines there, and there was these boxes stacked up, and when they opened the boxes, there was guillotines in the boxes, which is exactly what they portrayed in the movie The Rapture. The movies, several of them, they made 4 of them, I believe, in the 70s, which showed, people would be laid down face up on a guillotine, right? And they would either have to take the mark of the beast, but they didn't call it that, right? They just call it, it's like a chip that we have now. So now they want to chip everybody. And that chip idea is actually in the Obamacare. So now this is the end of days, the rapture, this apocalyptic version of things, right? And it's stimulated Christians now to say anything that's galactic or out of body, it's like anything they see, they can't explain. They describe it off as demons, right? It's all demons now. So now what's incredible. Now here's the reality. It was presented as prophecy. Now in this case, I just so happen to know exactly where those prophecies came from. And so what they did, because they prophesied of it, this is their practice. They told us what they were going to do, and then we accepted it. And so now you see those things, and they're trying to implement those things, and they would be much further along, but there's been a massive energetic shift. So the catastrophic timeline that they had set up is no longer in play. They can't do it. They can't execute their plan. So what's happened is, because they cannot execute their plan, you still have remnants where you see these things that look like, oh, this was prophesied of. So people will jump on that and say, and that means this, right? So I'm just curious if you think it's possible, especially because of the way you described it. Because here's what I definitely know. You will still hear people talking about something like the global currency reset, which I know for a fact that will never happen. Because now it could have happened, but the real global reset, which is what the plan called for from the 70s, was where you take the population and you bring them down to a manageable number of 500 million people. And it's written on the Georgia Guidestones. I mean, it's literally written in stone. This is the plan. And in that plan, there was actually a secret compartment in those rocks. It's been removed since, but it actually described how you could use vaccines and cancer and various diseases to reduce the population of the planet. And so now we're in this depopulation agenda. So I'm curious, because I feel that we get caught up in these absolute truths. And especially when it's turned into something where it's like, I'm going to give you the next secret next year, and it becomes a whole process that becomes a way that someone's making their living, which I don't begrudge someone for. And I don't doubt that he sat and talked with, some type of angelic being or metaphysical being or fourth dimensional being of some sort. I'm just curious, is it possible in your mind that even though those predictions were made and those things happened, is it possible that that's a nefarious agenda? And it's just an illusion that they've created?
I believe it's all this delusion that they created, and they want to create that, and they keep on creating it by creating the fear that they put in everybody with their false flags of Sandy Hook and Columbine and Oklahoma City and everything else, 9/11. They create all these false flags to keep the fear going, to keep control of the population. So we have to get out of that fear and live in love and spread the love and peace and create a new world.
Absolutely. So no, Fred, thank you so much for that. Shailea, are you on the phone?
I am. Aloha.
The infamous, fantastic, part fairy, part majestic being, Shailea. I won't even say your last name. We'll just say Shailea for now. So, Shailea, how are you today? Shailea
I'm very good. I didn't know I was infamous.
Infamous to me, yeah. Famous to me, but internally famous, not in a bad way.
Yeah.
So,
well, thank you. I don't think I'm famous, but
not in this dimension, but certainly throughout the galaxies you are.
You're very kind.
So, Ms. Shailea, what do you think about this concept that I'm talking about? Because I really think it is important. Because so often, there'll be someone who has something we've never heard of. It blows our mind, right? Mm-hmm. But then, if we follow along in prophecies and predictions, I mean, is it possible that so much of it, a lot of this stuff is just created by the Illuminati, the Order, and just people are given these experiences? So
yes, it is possible where there's parts true and parts not so true. And so humans are so creative that we create self-fulfilling prophecies all the time. And if we're fed certain stimuli and are manipulated in a certain way, our creative abilities begin to create that which was suggested or imagined or foretold. But it's very important to come back to your own self and realize that the point of creation is in the moment of now. With each moment, you're in the center of that creation. When you create there, the past and future is malleable and it changes. And that to create either a self-fulfilling prophecy, either personally for your life or collectively, is not a healthy thing to do.
So, well, explain that. So you're saying that in this moment, in this present moment, this is where all creation really happens, that in this perpetual now. Because it sounds like to me, you know, that you're talking about a now moment that changes the past and the future as well as the present.
Yes.
So expand on that a little bit and just help people understand that, because I think that's an incredible concept.
Well, we are in the now. We are creatures that imagine the future and the past. I mean, we remember the past and imagine the future. So, unlike, for example, the animal kingdom, which are in the now all the time and constantly responding to it through instinct and their, innate intelligence, we have extra dimensional aspects of that we relate to in ourselves, and often it's fear of the future and feeling the past is not able to be worked with, that we're doomed by whatever occurred in the past. We're doomed by our genetics. We're doomed by history. When in truth, that isn't true, because I believe that humans were created to span the dimensions as we grew as we evolved into maturity. And therefore, the creator path is how to create your reality, which we do every moment quite seamlessly. In some of the things that I've read and experienced, the other systems are unable to create a reality that sustains. For example, like you walk out of your house in the morning, when you come back, it's still there. In other civilizations, they had to use technology to achieve that. But we have source technology inside of us. And that's the true meaning of, go ahead. Somebody wants to talk.
That's an incredible thing you just said. I wanted to highlight it. That in other dimensions, other places, other realms of existence you're talking about, that, when they shut the door, they can come back out and the world's a totally different place. But here, because we are constantly holding our reality in place, it would appear that we have a certain level of comfort and familiarity that is, how are we able to hold that frequency, and is that the best way to do it, I guess?
Well, we're constantly creating anyway. When we begin to analyze and observe how we're doing it and with what frequency and emotional vibration, then we become better creators. I believe that we live. Well, take it this way. What humans are in their maturity, and we are moving into that, because it's our time to be responsible and guardians for the planet. So the wisdom that we've gained through all the experiences that we've had enables us to begin to take on that role. In ancient times, it's called, taking your majority. Now, there are other species that really didn't want that because they were utilizing our energy for their own purposes. But you have said yourself that this is the era of the human. This is the time for the human to stand up and begin to realize and create its natural creative abilities from source. So if we look at ourselves carefully, we have 5 elements within ourselves: air, earth, fire, water, and ether. So we have elemental kingdom. We have David kingdom. We receive all the nutrients from Mother Earth that help our body to become strong and healthy. And we breathe the air, and our bodies are made of water, and we work together. Then we also are part of the animal kingdom, mammalian. So we have all the wisdom of that world within us. We are human, and our humanity derives from starfire and love that we were created from as love and as an expression of, can we see what love is? This was something that the rest of the universe wanted to truly explore, and so did Source. So we are starfire and love. And in our journey, we have also received from many different races across our galaxy and universe all their DNA. And there were different kinds of ideas and concepts about, you can only be pure DNA from one place. But humans have embody the genetics of all of the galaxy, many parts of the galaxy and many parts of the universe. And there's a reason for that, which I'll come to in a minute, but we also have all of the rays of the angelic kingdom. And the rays are intelligent, and they're also made of fire. And so we're this kind of composite being. And because of what happened before, you could say, many, many wars in the cosmos. You hear them in the Bible as, the wars in the heavens. Or within our history, there's archaeological expressions and of different kinds of nuclear wars where in the Sahara there's glass everywhere, Sodom and Gomorrah, all those old stories.
Right, there's nuclear radiation found at the bottom of the Red Sea and other ancient sites where there's no history that we have recorded that demonstrates any kind of nuclear testing or anything of that nature. So it doesn't make sense because it actually speaks to an ancient nuclear source.
And you look in the Hindu, their history and all of their literature, and they had very advanced vehicles, and they engaged in warfare in their great cycles, 26,000-year cycles, just like what we're in right now. And
so
they all
the vehicle Shilea is referring to, they actually discovered that. There's actually a military team that unearthed that, and it is a pyramid-shaped flying vehicle that they have pulled out and they have utilized, and that's from my sources that is absolutely true. And from my understanding, that is anti-gravitational technology, and they thought were buildings, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
and it was called a Merkava, VAH. So we are a part of all of that. Many of us have had lifetimes in those eras and remember different things about them. They're very similar to today, or Atlantis, or Lemuria. And each time they became technologically a little bit more lopsided than they should have been, they created they created catastrophic timelines for themselves because they, just were outward oriented in the worlds of matter. Nothing wrong with it. It just needs balance. And they got in wars with each other. And not only here, but elsewhere through the universe and in the Milky Way, where one of the spiral arms is broken. We have the asteroid belt. We have the ancient planet Tiamat, which is the harmonic planet that was destroyed. And we're kind of living with that memory inside of our DNA and inside of our cells and atoms. And we came to embody it, all these wars and all these different civilizations and all the kingdoms of the earth inside one being, to see if we could bring harmony into ourselves and learn to truly create in balance and harmony with creation and creator. So that takes us to the present. So it's a wonderful honor to be incarnate in such a body that carries so much and has this extraordinary opportunity to go beyond and to move into a higher dimensional expression with the earth. And we're doing it alchemically with her now, is my belief and experience.
Absolutely. So, Shelley, I want to talk about some things you just mentioned, and that was a lot of amazing things that I think could be brand new for a lot of people. But let's go back to these times throughout history where technology became, was something that, could have been integrated naturally in alignment with natural law, but at some point it got out of hand, right? Now, I believe we're at that point again right now. And they had created catastrophic timelines, and I believe that the charge on humanity right now is to align ourselves with natural law, because we are certainly out of balance with all the technology that is available to us now, which is really not even that advanced by comparison to what has existed throughout history and other places. And I believe that the most important thing right now for the success of humanity is for us to integrate the technology and the experiences we've had into the age that we're going to create. And
Absolutely.
you said something about embodying that within this body. Now, you're the first, you and your partner, for the past 40 years almost, right?
No, not that long. It's probably 29.
Okay, 29 years. 29 years you have been working together. You are some of the first, or the first, to my knowledge, who ever really started to hold classes to teach about ascension in the body, right?
Yes, my partner, he received that. And when he told me, we're meant to ascend inside the body, at first I was like, you've got to be kidding. And the whole idea was just, for me, it was kind of funny because I'm like, can I get out of here? it was really dense back then. But then I understood right away, less than 24 hours, and it was very intriguing. But nobody was talking about it, and this was even in the Bay Area and California, where all the new ideas and energies come up through the portals there. It's a place where new ideas are kind of generated from many different levels of beings and source. So, but it seemed kind of antique, like like what Jesus did in the body. It was hard to understand, but over the years, because I do work every day, going as balanced in the inner self as the outer self, I learned from my own source self, like everybody can, every single person can, this other universe, which is like our twin, in our body. Like, we have a matter body, but the other part of us is made of light, and we're constantly doing reciprocal fields with that body, and we can move in and out of the matter part of ourselves through our heart into, and we do it when we wake up in the morning in this beautiful world, and then when we sleep in dream time. But beyond that too, in meditation, it's like your evolution is designed by your own soul and source. So we don't need Merkabas or Vas, or humans don't need vehicles except for their own Merkaba to travel. They can travel in the inner worlds and outer worlds, in the past and future, all by themselves. So that was the big surprise about, and when you call it ascension, it's just upgrading your DNA. Because all the worlds are inside each other, and they're inside of you, and they're outside of you. They're all, they're nested holograms, one inside the other, emanations in that matter between matter and light of this beautiful energy of source. And the etherium, I call it the etherium, which is the height of the fifth element in the elemental worlds. To me, now, because I learned so much, you can go, your thoughts, emotions, ideas, concepts, it's like every day are matched by whatever happens to you every day. It's a perfect match. And so the Ethereum is so sensitive and such an extraordinary part of Source that you're always getting a reflection, so you can learn how to create better. So,
you're referring to synchronicity?
That's synchronicity at a certain level, but when it first begins, it seems like coincidence. But they're meaningful coincidences that are perfectly suited to each person's unique life. They're very personal. And the fact that the universe is so intelligent, Source is so intelligent, and it has created this magnificent creation that we live in when we open our eyes and go outside and be in nature, and the flow that matches our exact vibration of manifestation, so that we learn how to create better.
So, in this creative process that you're describing, now, a lot of times in our modern culture, the way that being creative is valued is just as an artist or just as a musician, in the arts. It's something just more or less considered entertainment or tertiary, right? It's extra. But in reality, all of us are, it gives some truth to that scripture where it says that we are made in the likeness and image of our Creator. And so in this, there's a physical reflection of what we are creating with our imaginations and our connection with that visual reality or internal reality, and the vibration that we're creating can manifest here in real life. Is that close to what you're saying?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That in truth, we are a fractal or a perfect, each one of us, tiny spark that grows bigger and bigger, with all the attributes of the source of all things and all love. And we design our lives sometimes, our blueprints before we incarnate, and we notice coincidence, and then it becomes much more rich, because once you realize that you are kind of a creator in training, you don't have to worry about past and future anymore. You just you're aware of it, and if there are things in your past or your future, or if you want to heal your ancestral lines and lineage, going all the way back through your Merkaba fields and forward through your future selves and descendants, you're capable of doing that with the angelic rays and flames that are part of what you are. So you can heal a lot just in the now, in yourself, what I call like in between waking and sleeping, or matter and light, is when you meditate. But you meditate all the time anyway, whenever you're relaxed. And I mean, you could be washing your dishes and receive insight.
I've always looked at meditation as, mindfulness or being present. And, I look at something like Bikram yoga or hot yoga that has the same 26 postures, and they refer to it as an active guided meditation, but they're not telling you what to do. They're literally just allowing your body to go through seemingly some discomfort in different poses, just opening your energy. But you're moving, you're actively engaged, but you are present and, in a state of meditation. So I think it's very important that people realize that, this goes back to the principle or the idea talking about where in the Bible it says to pray without ceasing, right? Which is something that, based on what most people define as prayer, doesn't really seem possible, because prayer is kind of viewed as constantly asking for stuff, right? But in reality, it's just an intercession with the spirit and the body, and recognizing those two things in that moment as one in a cooperative agreement, so to speak.
Right. And you are life in motion when you wake up in the world of matter. But really, it's the most beautiful reflection of all of the language of creation that's on the inner realms. You were speaking of the flower of life and the sacred geometries and the toroidal fields that we are in our light body. So this process in my life of a journey where I worked with the light body, and then my partner and I have been teaching it for many years, and it just keeps growing. The thing that's so astounding about Source to me, it never repeats. It's always absolutely more beautiful and more beyond imagination every time you dip into the twin world that we're part of. And some people call it plasma world, or fluidity of the oceans of light. And so after a while, you see through the eyes of how the inner geometry and architecture of creation, with all of the emanations that come from the worlds without form, create this beautiful world that we're in every day through us.
And this is humanity as the generator and extension of the source energy that is the Earth all by itself. In a sense, goes back to your original point of we are the caretakers of the planet.
Yeah.
And therefore have a responsibility.
Because Earth herself, as a planetary being, I call her Source Earth. When you follow your light body lines, and you go, imagine, but it's infinite. You imagine this line going directly up in the vertical pillar, and it keeps going and going and going. It goes all the way back through time and space, and then up through Earth, and you get Source Earth. And the same with her. If you go that direction down, it creates this great circle, and the two circles come together as masculine and feminine in this case, because she's a feminine planetary logos. And also provide all the atmosphere and the beautiful dynamics of life, from flowers to fruits to vegetables to oceans to this beautiful interconnectedness with all of creation through the elemental, Davic, all the kingdoms like that are within us too. And we're on a creator path and learning how to create. And sometimes we make mistakes, but they're valuable too.
Well, I think we need to have several more shows to examine these things and talk about them. I think they're really incredible. Shelley, I've got a couple people that are waiting on hold. I'm going to see if they want to come in and ask any questions. So 719, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hello?
This is
What's your
Faye.
name?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Who is this?
It's Faye.
Oh, it's amazing, Faye. I was on the phone with Shylea today, and I tried to call you because I wanted you to connect today.
I had that feeling. I was going to text you yesterday and tell you that I was working for Dr. Phil this afternoon, and I just got home almost an hour ago, and I've been listening since, like the second hour. And I just had a feeling, but yeah. So
Faye, let me introduce you. So Faye is an energy healer.
Yes, I know. I've heard all about you. You're wonderful.
I've heard all about you too.
Thank you.
So just as a witness that the universe is giving us right in this exact moment, that all creation is instantaneous, that just as Shylea said, that earlier today I wanted to bring the two of them together for the first time because they're both, kind of guiding forces in my life. And now here we are, a live broadcast. Must be that the universe wanted the entire world to hear the two of you talk. I'll have to do another show on that probably. But
yes, faster and faster manifestation.
I know. It's wonderful.
I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with you, Shylea.
Oh, I'm looking forward to having a conversation with you. So I'm so happy we met. This is great.
Yes. And listening to you, I just had such resonance. The energy that you were giving off. I was, yes, that's right. And then, of course, some of the things that you said were new to me, so I love that too.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm glad you were receptive to the energy. And now that there's three of us, we can multiply the energy talking right now.
Yes.
So while I have you two on the phone, I feel like, hey, let me just put this in the collective consciousness here is, we're in a transitional moment, right? So, and in this transitional moment, there is the whole world is changing, and people may be watching through the political arena and the various, social media and mainstream media, this incredible show that is being played out in front of all of us, right? And we're all watching these events very closely. And, part of the reason that we are talking about projects and project funding. Now, Shylea and Faye are both actively involved, and they have incredible versions, very similar versions, but different in their own right, of healing centers and distribution centers. Both each have that, one in Hawaii and one up in Colorado. And that will enable them to identify projects that are in harmony with the greater mission, which we define as it's projects that are in line with the best interest of the planet, the people, and the individual human experience. Just to generically put that out there. But it is because of the trustee for the Mana World Holding Trust that she has authorized Create Change to set up these distribution centers around the world, and we have those. We have people all over the world who are ready to go to start to distribute funds for projects the second that we're able to bring money down freely. And most recently, Kim has completely reprogrammed the entire world financial system using a code that nobody knows, or very few people on the planet even know what it is. And Shelley and I talk about this a lot, and we think it's source code. Right, that she wrote the whole plan in source code, and so that is the creative code. So literally, as the funds come in, we'll be creating a new reality and be able to move that money into a way that's into people's hands, and that's the goal. So I'm always trying to get a better understanding of those things that are happening in the etheric, or ethereum, as Shalea says, in the energetic world from Faye. Yeah, from Faye and Shalea. So, I think, ladies, let me ask you, because I have you here, and I feel like I had this incredible crew of superhero galactics, right? So, what is your feeling right now in the energy, right now, as far as what you're seeing, and what do you believe? Are we there? I mean, just in your feel for what the moment that we're in, because I feel like this is the moment when everything changes. That in this present moment, in this now, that we have broken through, that the bad guys are set at bay, and that humanity is truly about to experience liberation, and it might be a little slower for the masses to see, but it feels like it's right here. What do you think? Faye?
Yes. Yes. It is. It is now happening, and it's happening for the people who are aware of it happening. I mean, it's happening for everyone, but the consciousness of the person determines their experience of it. If the resonance, if a person is staying in a low frequency energy, they're mad all the time, or they're afraid, or whatever it is, or in lack, they're not going to have the same experience as one who lives in those higher dimensions or those higher frequencies: love, compassion, unconditional love, bliss, peace. So there's that. And when we're talking on 3D, when we're having a discussion like we are now in this dimension, we are speaking from that point of view. You can live in this dimension, as Shalea said, and then you can have a physical body and think with a higher mind, and that carries your body, it sends your body up into a higher dimension, even though you're in 3D, multi-locational. So it really depends on the person and their choices. What do you say, Shalea?
Well, I think that's really accurate. And what I've noticed this week, particularly, was it appears that many of the collectives of all different kinds of, if you look at the political groups and then, different creative groups and different industrial groups. And it was something you were saying before, Tank, where how we're creative in multiple ways. You can be a healer and be a mechanic, and you heal cars and people, too, when they walk in. So all areas of life are creative, and you might choose to, maybe you had gnomic experiences if you had a part of yourself in the elemental kingdoms, and you work with forges and flames and mechanical genius, and you're just as important as anybody else, because it's truly a gift. And so we find ourselves in all these different collectives, and it seems like right now there's like a clash within them, and there's a lot of stimulation and a lot of discussion about who's right, who's wrong. So today I was thinking, you know what? It's like planet Earth just became an ashram, a fourth dimensional ashram, where these patterns just start boiling like boiling water, bubbling, and they are just spinning through everyone so quickly that it's clearing the field for what is to come even faster than it has been ever before.
Yes.
The great universal events must happen through all dimensions simultaneously.
The master event, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a master event. Now, I believe wholeheartedly. As a matter of fact, I can feel it as we speak, that we are in the midst of that very master event right now as we speak. And I'm not just talking smack. it's the timing is right. And I know that there is resistance on all sides, and there's psyops going on, and there's chaos that appears to be, various antics are ensuing. But the reality is that all of those things, that we can just collapse all of these other realities, all of these other possibilities, and hold the frequency just the same way that we hold the frequency, so that when we open our door in the morning, that the world is still there, the same way that our children are still our children, and the people we love are still there, and the trees are still there. We can do that very same thing with creating something new, just by collapsing any possibility of failure, any plausibility, or any other reality that doesn't allow us to thrive. Now, in this new age, yes, go ahead, Faye.
I think the best way to collapse those realities is to ignore them and to put all your focus on the reality of that you want to see and create. All the rest is it doesn't exist if you don't participate.
You don't give it energy. That's important. But at the same time, when you're seeing part of this evolution from third to fourth to fifth dimension, or these different states of consciousness, which represent different DNA strands that are coming online, and you can live in all of them at once, so that's multilocational. However, you can see them in different ways, and because there was such extreme polarity here in the third dimension, it created a catalyst for transformation. It made us go so deep into our internal resources that we wouldn't have really done if we were living what we thought of as our perfect life. But the catalyst that we brought into our expression has enabled us to dig so deep beyond anything we ever thought possible. So we feel gratitude for that. And now it's almost like a moment in cymetics, which is in the science of sound, where as the notes change, for a moment, whatever patterns were there before are no longer there, but the new patterns have not evinced themselves, in the matter. If it was sand that you were putting a sound through, and you could see the beautiful patterns that were created as certain harmonies, and then as it shifts into the new musical harmonics, for that very moment before it happens, there's a moment of like chaos, but in that, all the repeating patterns and time loops within ourselves personally and also in the macrocosm, they can go into this still point of source 0 point, where all the blueprints are, if you use your focused intention and for that to be so. And when that occurs, then everything is harmonized, neutralized, and reconciled, and it's a moment for starting anew.
And that's how we clear our
moment.
past. That's how we clear our past in the present and create our future. It's beautiful the way you said it.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I work
now,
with that.
Ladies, I hate to cut you off, but we are out of time. So I'm going to use this as a teaser. I promise we are going to have Shylea and Faye on together at the same time. I will certainly realize now that we'll have to dedicate some real time to allow them to explore some of these issues. In the meantime, I want everyone to know that we are winning, and we are at a great moment in history. It is not time for us to give up. It is not time for us to back down. It is time for us to demonstrate the full scope of who we are inside and out, and allow humanity to thrive so the entire world has to recognize. So don't be afraid. Don't back down. Be your personal, amazing, beautiful self, and allow that to shine for everyone.